Two people retire on the same day. Same age, 65. Same nest egg, $1 million each. Same portfolio, same average return over the rest of their lives. Same withdrawal, $40,000 a year to live on. Call them Robert and Diane. They worked in the same industry. They read the same books. If you looked at their spreadsheets on the day they retired, you would not be able to tell them apart. 14 years later, Robert is out of money. Completely. At 79, he's back to living on Social Security alone, selling the house he swore he'd never sell. Diane is 79 too. She's still writing the same $40,000 check to herself every year, and when she eventually passes, she leaves her kids over $800,000. Same starting number, same average return. One word explains the entire gap between them, and it's a word almost nobody hears until it's already too late to fix. Sequence, the order in which your returns show up. Robert happened to retire right before the market dropped hard, and he had no choice but to sell shares at the bottom just to eat and pay the mortgage. Diane's bad years came late, after her account had grown enough to absorb the hit. Here's what makes this whole story worth 40 minutes of your time. The jump from $300,000 to $2 million is not a fantasy. It's happened over and over to ordinary people who never made six figures a year, going back 100 years of market history. The math works, but that number only survives if you get three separate things right in order, and almost everyone who fails at the very last one, the one they never saw coming. A quick note before we go further. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial, tax, or investment advice. Your situation is unique, so consider speaking with a qualified professional before making financial decisions. If this channel is about protecting the retirement you already worked for, hit subscribe now, because what I'm about to walk you through is the exact three-stage chain that separates the Roberts from the Dianes, and it starts decades before anyone ever thinks about retirement at all.
Build the compounding engine. Nobody warns you how slow the first 10 to 15 years actually feel. You put money in every paycheck, you check the accounts, and the number barely moves. Run the real math, put away $800 a month for 10 years, and you've personally contributed $96,000. Your total account, growth included, might be sitting around $160,000. That means the market has handed you something like $66,000 for showing up. Real money, but it doesn't feel like much when you're staring at a decade of statements that look almost flat. This is the stretch where most people quit. Not because the strategy failed, because it's boring, and boring feels like it isn't working. There's a point, though, where the math flips, and almost nobody tells you when it's coming. Somewhere around the $200,000 to $300,000 mark, the interest your money throws off in a single year becomes larger than the total amount you personally contributed that year. Once you cross that line, the portfolio stops being something you're building and starts being something that's building itself. You're no longer the main engine, you're just the guy topping off the tank. But getting to that line requires you to survive something that has nothing to do with picking good investments. It requires you to survive yourself. And this is where the data gets uncomfortable. Dalbar, the research firm that has tracked real investor behavior against the market for decades, has shown that over long stretches, the gap between what the market actually returns and what the average investor actually pockets can run several percentage points a year, sometimes wider, sometimes narrower, depending on the period. The reason isn't bad luck. It's that people buy after the headlines turn optimistic and sell after the headlines turn scary, which is the exact opposite of the order that makes money. Run that gap out over 20 years on a $300,000 portfolio, and you're not talking about a rounding error. You're talking about a difference that can run into six figures, in some stretches well past $500,000, sitting on the table, and the only person who took it off the table was the investor, by trading on emotion instead of sitting still. So Chapter 1 isn't really about investing at all. It's about outlasting your own nervous system long enough for the compounding to take over. Do that and you've cleared the first gate. But clearing the first gate doesn't mean you're safe, because the next leak in the system doesn't come from panic. It comes from paperwork you probably haven't looked at closely in years.
Stop the hidden leaks. Let's talk about Marcus. 42 years old, lives outside Columbus, Ohio, has $180,000 saved and 23 years left until he plans to retire at 65. Marcus does everything Chapter 1 asked of him. He doesn't panic sell. He leaves the money invested and stays disciplined through every market cycle. And he still might end up hundreds of thousands of dollars behind because of a decision he barely thought twice about. Marcus has two paths in front of him, and on paper they look almost identical. Path 1. Marcus goes with actively managed mutual funds and a financial advisor who charges a combined 1.5% a year. That reduces his assumed return after fees from 10% to 8.5%. Run that forward 23 years, and Marcus retires with a little under $1.2 million. Path 2. Marcus skips the advisor and the actively managed funds. He puts the same money into a low-cost index fund tracking the S&P 500, something like Vanguard's flagship fund, which currently charges around 0.03% a year, essentially nothing. His return stays close to that historical 10%. Same 23 years, same starting balance, and Marcus is sitting on $1.6 million. Read that gap again. 1.5% a year, a number that sounds almost too small to matter, quietly cost Marcus nearly $500,000 by the time he needed the money most. $436,000 to be exact. That's not a market crash. Nobody lost that money in a downturn. It was paid out one small percentage point at a time to someone else for decades while Marcus wasn't looking. And fees are only half of Chapter 2. The other half is the account itself, specifically when Uncle Sam gets his cut. If Marcus builds that $1.6 million in a traditional pre-tax account, a regular 401k or traditional IRA, every dollar he pulls out in retirement gets taxed as ordinary income. Depending on how quickly he withdraws the money, his other retirement income, and the tax rates in effect at the time, Marcus could ultimately pay well past $300,000 in federal income taxes across retirement, right when he can least afford to give money away. The exact number depends entirely on his income and bracket the years he withdraws, but the pattern holds for almost everyone in this position. The account type you choose can be worth more or cost you more than the fund you pick. There's also a quieter version of this leak for people who trade individual stocks in a regular taxable brokerage account instead of holding steady in a retirement account. Every time you sell a winner for a short-term gain, you owe tax on it that year. No waiting, no deferral. Over 20 or 30 years, that constant tax drag behaves almost exactly like the fee drag we just walked through. Different mechanism, same result. Money quietly leaving before it ever gets the chance to compound. The fix here isn't complicated, even if almost nobody does it. Push your costs as close to zero as the market allows, and understand the tax character of every account you own. Because a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, where you pay tax now and withdraw tax-free later, can be worth an enormous amount at the finish line compared to a traditional account, depending on your situation and future tax rates. That's a conversation for your CPA, not for a YouTube video. But it's a conversation worth having well before you retire, not the week after. Get Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 right, and you'll likely arrive at retirement with a real, healthy, well-preserved number, which is exactly why Chapter 3 catches so many people off guard. They did everything right, and they still run out of money. Remember Robert from the very beginning? This is where his story actually breaks.
Protect the finish line. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly, and it's the whole reason Robert and Diane ended up in completely different places despite starting identical. While you're still working and contributing, a market crash is genuinely good news for you. Prices are on sale. You keep buying at the discount, and when the broad U.S. market eventually recovers, as it has after past bear markets, you're sitting on more shares than you would have owned otherwise. The moment you retire, that relationship flips completely. A crash is no longer a discount, it's an emergency, because now you have no paycheck coming in to take advantage of it. You still need $40,000 this year to live on, And if the market is down 30%, the only place that money can come from is your portfolio, meaning you're forced to sell shares at the worst possible price just to cover groceries and the mortgage. Every share you sell in that crash is gone permanently. It never gets the chance to ride the recovery back up because you already cashed it out. This is what financial researchers call sequence of returns risk, and it's exactly what separated Robert from Diane. Robert's bad years, the market dropping roughly 30%, followed by another rough year, landed in the first 2 years of his retirement. Because he had to keep pulling out that same $40,000 while his account was already bleeding, the damage compounded on itself, and mathematically, he never recovered. He ran out of money in his late 70s. Diane experienced the exact same average return over her lifetime. Her bad years just happened to land near the end, after decades of growth had already built up a large enough cushion to absorb the hit without collapsing. Same average, wildly different outcome. That's the entire lesson of sequence risk in one sentence. You've probably heard of the 4% rule, the idea developed by a financial planner named William Bengen back in the 1990s that withdrawing around 4% of your portfolio a year, adjusted for inflation, has historically lasted through even the worst 30-year stretches in U.S. market history. It's a genuinely useful starting point, and it was specifically tested against some of the most difficult historical retirement periods. But it is still a historical guideline, not a guarantee. And future returns, inflation, fees, taxes, and spending needs may look different from the past. So how do people like Diane reduce that risk instead of just hoping for the best? One move is called a cash buffer, and it's simple enough that you could set it up this weekend if you wanted to. 3 to 5 years before you plan to retire, you start setting aside somewhere around 1 to 2 years of living expenses in something boring and stable, a money market fund, short-term treasuries, a high-yield savings account. Nothing fancy, nothing that can crash 30% in a bad month. Then, when the market does what markets eventually do and drops hard right as you're retiring, you can draw from that cash buffer instead of immediately selling stocks at depressed prices. You're not trying to time anything or predict anything. You're just buying your portfolio time to heal, the same way you'd give a broken bone time to set before you put weight on it again. That one habit can meaningfully reduce the risk of being forced to sell stocks during the worst possible moment. It doesn't guarantee Diane's outcome, but it gives your retirement plan more room to survive an early market shock.
What to do with all of this? So here's the honest summary. Turning $300,000 into $2 million isn't a trick, and it isn't luck. It's been done by regular people across a full century of market history that includes wars, recessions, and crashes far worse than anything currently in the headlines. The system does the heavy lifting on its own. Your only real job is to avoid being the one who breaks it. 3 things to actually act on, starting this week if you can. First, look at what you're paying in fees right now. Fund expenses, advisor fees, all of it, and push toward getting that number as close to rock bottom as you reasonably can. Second, give yourself a cooling-off period before any big financial decision made out of fear or excitement. A simple 72-hour rule works well for a lot of people. Sleep on it twice before you sell anything in a panic. Third, if retirement is anywhere within the next 5 to 10 years, start building that cash buffer now, before you actually need it. The whole point of a lifeboat is that you build it before the ship starts taking on water. The people who actually end up wealthy through long-term investing tend to have remarkably boring investing lives at 45 and remarkably comfortable, well-defended lives at 65. That's not an accident. It's what happens when you respect the finish line as much as you respected the starting line. If this video helped connect some dots for you, do me a favor and hit subscribe. This channel is built entirely around helping you protect what you've already worked decades to build. Drop a comment and let me know, which chapter hit closest to home for you? The slow accumulation years, the fees, or the withdrawal risk? And if you want to go deeper on how to actually build that cash buffer step by step, I've got a video on exactly that queued up next. Click it right after this one. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today.
Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.